Hello everybody, my name is LaTanya. I am an 8th grade social studies language arts teacher in Southern California. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, just to give you a quick backstory on what this channel is about, I typically will upload vlogs on Sunday that just kind of runs the gamut of just reflecting different moments in my life as a teacher and just as a person in general. Normally this would be one of those vlogs, but given the environment that we're in the country and the things that we've been dealing with, it just didn't necessarily feel right for me to upload just like a standard weekly vlog. And in all honesty, I wasn't really in a mental or emotional place to want to do that. And so this video today is going to be a little bit different. This is something that is coming straight from my heart, and I'm sending it out to those of you that are teachers out there in the world, and it is basically an open letter to white teachers. And before I share that letter with you guys, I want to make sure to make a few things clear. Number one, this letter is specifically geared towards white teachers who have found themselves questioning what they can do, what they should do going forward, given the situation with the George Floyd case and the Black Lives Matter movement that has picked up quite a bit of traction because of everything that's going on. It is in no way or by no means insinuating that every teacher that is white is ill-equipped or not properly equipped or does not know to do some of the things that I mentioned in this letter, because I am well aware that there are a lot of white teachers out there that have been putting in this kind of work for a long time and is the driving force in what they do. In addition, this letter is not specifically just for white teachers. I titled it Dear White Teachers because in my experience, I've gotten a lot of white teachers reaching out to me for some level of support, encouragement, or education. But that does not mean that teachers from other backgrounds don't need to be educated in some form or supported in some form as well. So I don't want anyone to make any of those assumptions as you're hearing this letter. This letter is sparked by the fact that I was getting a lot of questions and a lot of reaching out to me was being done by specifically white teachers, so this letter is for them. But I honestly believe that this letter and some of the sentiments that I share would be of benefit for any teacher to hear. So with that being said, I'm going to share my letter with you. I hope that you hear it with open ears, an open mind, and an open heart. And at the end of this video, in the description box, you'll find a few links to articles, things that I've watched, things that I've been told have been helpful if you're someone that's new to all of this, as a way of me supporting you in the beginning of this process. So I hope that you hear the letter, again, with an open mind and an open heart. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Just know that if your comments are negative or dismissive, that I will not be responding to those comments in any way. Dear white teachers, as I start this letter, the clock has just struck midnight and a new day has begun. It is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020, the day after what has been called Blackout Tuesday. When scrolling through social media throughout the day, page after page was marked with some variation of a black square in support of the amplification of black voices. In the days prior, I saw an increase in white followers on my Instagram account, which was coupled by an increase in DMs expressing shock in what you have been faced with and questions asking, what can I do? What should I say? Where do I go from here? I tried to answer as many of these as possible, all while dealing with my own emotions in regards to yet another case of a black life being taken. So what happens now? Here are a few suggestions. First, always remember this time. Remember how outraged and saddened you are. Remember this urgent feeling you have to be better in your practice and pedagogy. Carry it with you each time you enter the classroom, plan a lesson, teach a lesson, talk to a student, or talk with the family. Seek to understand how the past affects the current and how your actions or lack of action affects the future. If you do not understand or recognize the correlation between what does and does not happen in the classroom for students of color and what you are seeing in the news now, then you do not understand the true significance of the work that you do. Second, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Much of what is missing in our classrooms today is the opportunity for students to engage in open, planned and unplanned dialogue that is reflective, inquisitive, and celebratory of who they are and the experiences that have shaped who they are. These opportunities should not be occurring in isolation. These opportunities should not be solely based on projects that fall in line with special days or months. Instead, these opportunities should be available at any given moment in the classroom. Do not maneuver your way around conversations that specifically talk about race, culture, and ethnicity because you want to give the illusion that you don't see any differences in your students, or because you are afraid that you will say the wrong thing, or because you want to protect your students from the part of history that is sad or too much for them to bear. Be honest with yourself and realize you are not protecting your students, you are protecting yourself. I have watched 3rd and 8th graders engage in both lighthearted and heavy conversations about our country's tragic moments in history in relation to equality. At both levels, they thrived and outshined any expectations I had. In these moments, they were probably the most gracious toward each other as they shared their questions and perspectives. Not only that, it was these moments and lessons that stuck out to them as one of the highlights of the year. Third, self-reflect. Really think about what you do, how you do it, and who you do it to. Don't get stuck on the personal narrative where you insist that you care for and love all your students. Rest assured, we believe you. We know that you care about all your students, but is how you care for all your students equitable? Is the level of patience you show and the expectations you set forth the same for everyone? With good intentions, have you ever not offered an academic or social opportunity to a student because you didn't think they could handle it? If the schooling experience were truly equitable, would we see a persistent gap in academic performance as measured by standardized testing? If educators as a whole truly exercise the same care and patience for all students, would there be a discrepancy in the suspension rates? If the level of patience and care was not tied to some biases or misconceptions, shouldn't there be more racially balanced special ed populations in our schools? Now, before you blame family dynamics, parenting, or a lack of effort on the student's part when thinking about the aforementioned challenges, I would say do some research on the systemic discrimination that has occurred in our country for decades. This will show you why placing blame solely on families and the students is deeply flawed. Lastly, just listen. I have taught 15 years and I have had my share of difficult students from all racial backgrounds and genders. And I know it can be tough to try and teach a lesson and manage a class when you have a student, or 2, or 3, who just seem to take up more time from you than most. What I also know is that these students are simply in search of 3 things from their teacher: to be seen, to be valued, and to be heard. Many students of color, even the ones that are not the behavior issues, are not getting these things from their teachers and have never gotten it. This creates a classroom environment that causes a teacher to wonder, why do they act like that? Also, listen to what is being said by your colleagues and don't be afraid to challenge the reality they have crafted for themselves. Oftentimes, their reality allows them to shift the blame. It is easier to blame the student who is misbehaving as opposed to taking the time to think about how to cultivate and promote positive behaviors within that student. It is also easy to let the off-color remarks of colleagues go unaddressed. However, allowing these microaggressions to be vocalized and acted out without being checked simply because you don't want to be bothered or cause drama is one of the very reasons why we are struggling to find sustainable racial equality and harmony in this country. If you can do nothing else in this work, love your colleagues and students enough to address these types of comments and behaviors when they occur. To close, notice that nothing that I mention in this letter requires you to attend a training, buy a book, or pay a fee. Everything I have mentioned in this letter simply requires you to practice human kindness before anything else. Teaching 8th graders this year, I purposefully thought of them as human beings before I allowed myself to think of them as 8th graders. Doing this helped me stay grounded in creating a classroom environment where everyone felt seen, heard, and validated. As you start this process of creating a change in your teaching practices and interactions with students, be realistic in your expectations of yourself. Know that you will not be equipped in any capacity to create a revolution in your district, at your school, in your grade level, or even amongst your teammates. And that is okay. So go ahead and take that burden off your shoulders. At this point in time, you need to think about you and what you need to do, or perhaps what you need to stop doing. For many white teachers, the assumption is that it's going to be harder for you because of who you are or who you aren't. Push past that thought. Yes, it may be easier for me to create connections with Black students because I am Black, and we share some common experiences, and those common experiences connect us. However, over the years, I have also made just as strong connections with students that are not Black. And that is because at the forefront of my mind when I am teaching is making sure I see my students for the whole person that they are. So, white teachers, I hope I have encouraged you and given you comfort in knowing that starting the process is as simple as humanizing your work. However, I want to be clear in saying that staying persistent and committed to doing the work will not always be easy, and it will not always come naturally. The protests will dissipate and the news cycle will move on, but the relentless desire to be better must remain. The fervor in which you are seeking out information right now is the fervor you will need to maintain every time you sit down to plan out a lesson that is grounded in not just inclusion for the sake of inclusion, but whose aim is truly to value all students. Now that you are woke, you may not be able to celebrate that author you celebrated every year. Do that project you love so much, because now you may realize you should have never read that book or ever done that project to begin with. If a student points out that there is a student in the class that is different from everyone else, you will need to pause and allow that organic learning moment to flow. You will need to find fellow educators that truly support the new teaching path you are on, and in the process, you will need to expand your circle of experts. I joked with a friend the other day and said there is actually a little bit of Black privilege going on in the world right now, specifically in the teacher Instagram world. Simply because I'm a Black teacher, I have gained followers at a rate I have never seen before. The same can be said for other Black educators on social media. While we are certainly thankful for the new friends, I am sure I can speak for the majority of us when I say we want the increase to actually mean something in the grand scheme of the teaching community. I want to caution you though, please don't just put us in your pocket and feel like you've done something because you follow some Black teachers. You are largely missing the mark if you think that by following a few Black teachers and immersing yourself in books written by people that look just like you has equipped you to be culturally responsive. There is more to do. As we've learned, much of what has been said by the white teacher celebrities that other white teachers seem to flock to had already been said by teachers of color, but it fell upon deaf ears. You have to be willing to listen to the perspective we share because we were all Black students in our country's school system at some point. And many of us chose to teach because we knew what was lacking for students of color. As teachers today, we are hoping to rectify some of that in our classrooms and through what we share on our social media accounts. If you are following me because you want to pat yourself on the back because you've added a few people of color to your feed, then I politely welcome you to unfollow. On the other hand, if you are looking to address what has been lacking in education for a long time and want to affect change, then I welcome you with open arms. I wish you success and growth through the struggles of this new approach that you are taking. Know that I will be here for you as you do this work that will enrich the lives of your students. Hear me when I say I am proud of the steps that you are taking to listen, read, and educate yourself. I pray that you stay committed to the work we are all doing in the name of equality. You're here, I'm here, so let's do this. With love, support, and encouragement, LaTanya.